Mr. Bell?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Johnson, Mr. Superintendent, and board members. In your package, you will see the monthly financial report for FY 2014 for the month ending October 31st, 2013. If you take a look at the first page of the report, you go to the right side, you'll see that on a year-to-date basis, we have collected 40% of our anticipated revenue, which is very good because on a year-to-date basis, we're about 33% into the year, and we've collected $302,148,000, or 40% of our anticipations. If you take a look at where we were on a proportionate basis in FY13, we had collected 36.9%, or $270,392,000. So we're ahead substantially in terms of the revenue collection, and Mr. Thurman and I have been talking about what that might mean. I've had conversations with the tax commissioner, Ms. Lawson, for the county, and she says her system does indicate that our property, our ad valorem tax collections are in much better shape than they were last year. Now, the question is going to be, is that additional revenue, or, okay, are people just paying maybe their taxes earlier, okay? And really, there's no way that my office can answer that question. We are cautiously optimistic that on the revenue side, okay, we should end the year ahead of where we thought we would be. But we're still just optimistic in that regard. That would, of course, be offset by maybe some under-collections in some other areas as we go through the year. Okay? Maybe not offset dollar for dollar, so we are optimistic when we take a look at this. If you go to the lower right side of the first page, you'll see on an expenditure basis, we've expended 24.1% of the general operating fund appropriations, or $182,153,000. That compared to 13, you'll see that at this same point in 13, we had expended $171,954,000. So we have expended about $11 million more, okay, than we did at this point in 13. However, keep in mind that the FY14 budget, as adopted, is a $755.6 million adopted budget, whereas in 13 it was a $732 million budget. So we do have a larger budget. So those additional expenditures make some sense as we go into the year. The second page of the report is the pie chart that y'all are used to seeing. Third page is the trend analysis, and we've, for a number of months now, added some data to this. Well, that'll help you see where we are from a revenue point of view. At the top of the page, against the budget of 755.9, there was one amendment to the budget since we began the year for, I think, some E-rate funds. The actual revenue collected, as I said, $302,148,000 of total revenue. The projected year-to-date at this point in time, based on our projections, would have been $276,808,000. So we're about 9.15% on a total revenue basis ahead of schedule. Okay? We thought we'd be about 276. We're at 302. Where is that coming from? As I said earlier, it's coming really on the local side. State and local, no, not state, but local ad valorem consisted primarily of real estate and motor vehicles. We have budgeted $380.3 million. We actually have collected $220,399. Or 57.95%. We had projected we'd be at $197.442 million. So on the local revenue sources, we're 11% ahead as of the first third of the year. Where are we on the state anticipated revenues? We budgeted $375.5 million. We have actually collected $81.7 million, or 21.77%. We had projected we would be at $79,366,000, so at 81.7 we're slightly ahead, and so we're about 3% ahead. So on both of our major revenue components, we are ahead, and that is good news as we go into FY14. We've included our variance report at the back of the financial report, which indicates essentially what I've said, that shows in slightly different detail where we are. Just keep in mind that where we indicate that we have spent 24.1% of the budget on a straight line basis, we're at 33% of the year. And on the revenue side, we're substantially ahead where we thought we would be. Is that real money that we'll keep when we close the books? We are cautiously optimistic that we will keep some of it, maybe not all of it, but it's better than it being behind schedule.
Very good. Is there any discussion? Mr. Coleman?
So I was hoping we could talk.
Excuse me, we do have an additional board member just arrived. Mr. Mayfield, we're glad to have you. We thought the turkey had captured you there for a moment. I'm sorry, Mr. Coleman. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to dig into a couple of the areas where we do seem to be exceeding our budget on a run rate basis. I know we'll probably get deeper into remediation tactics for these in the beginning of next year, but I spotted at least 3 areas where it seems like we're running a little bit in advance: workers' compensation, legal fees, which has been a persistent problem, and transportation salaries. Could you talk to those 3 areas and your perspective on a run rate for the budget, and if you have any preliminary thoughts on remediation tactics?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Coleman. There is a problem with workers' compensation appropriations. We did change third-party providers. There are some expenses coming through the old provider, third-party administrator, that we have to pay. That has caused expenditures to be above our budgeted amount for 14. I think that's going to, workers' compensation, which is contained up in employee benefits in the bottom of the first page, we'll probably have to make some type of a mid-year adjustment in workers' compensation, but we are taking a real close look at those expenses. On legal fees, we were tracking along pretty close to the line, but I think there's additional detail that we've given y'all in relation to legal fee expenditures. Mr. Thurman's got some good news in that area. However, we may or may not have to make an adjustment, but right now I'd say we may have to make an adjustment in the legal fee appropriation. The transportation that you mentioned, I think Mr. Wilkins will tell you that they were under budgeted for the last couple of years, and so we've added additional appropriations for transportation, particularly in the areas of drivers and mechanics. And so that's why we're expending at a higher rate than we had the prior year.
No further questions? Mr. Campbell.
Dr. Bell, when you go back on the summary that shows the receipts that come in, just curious, when you look at the taxes on the beverages,
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where you are.
The top page, the summary page that shows the receipts that come in, total receipts.
Yes, sir.
If you look at month to date, taxes, beverages, through October it shows 0, and last year was $405,000. Just curious.
You're on the first page, or you on
the summary page of receipts?
Page 4, excuse me.
Page 4, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Taxes, beverages, we're showing through October 0, and when you compare it to last year, just 405. Just curious, why 0? Is that timing?
I'd have to check into that. Mr. Campbell, I can't answer that right away.
And just one other question. You did a great job, I think, responding to Mr. Coleman and to Thad's questions, but a follow-up to one of the questions that Thad had on page, bear with me. When you look at fund balances, I think you talked about the school nutrition in one of your responses back there, and you mentioned that I think $4.8 million had something to do with a breakout between school funds that were separated from athletics.
Yes, sir.
So when we look at the school nutrition fund, $4.9 million, if you do an adjustment for $4.8 million, is that actually 9.7 the balance should be? I was a little bit confused by the response.
Yeah, I think in the response, it's what is causing the month-to-date operating deficit of $4.8 million negative. the response indicates that there was a programming error, that when we did that split, y'all have asked that we divide nutrition from athletics, and the question prompted us to go back and take a look, and what the answer indicates is that negative 4.8 million is in error, okay, and the actual balance on a monthly basis should be a positive $361,930.
So does that mean that the fund balance for school nutrition is actually $9.7 million?
No, sir. It would be, and I don't know what components you're adding up, but the monthly number that would go into what's prior is a positive 361,000, not
Okay,
the
so-
negative 4.8.
Okay, so realistically, if you have 4.9, I'm sorry, really we're just adding back 361,000. That's what you're saying?
I think that's correct, yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Orson?
Yeah. Dr. Bell, I know, and we'll wait to hear obviously about where we are on legal fees, but I think one of the things at least I've struggled with is, and I know, I think Mr. McMahon had sent you a question, was sort of a classification of some of these expenses, which is we have a category of legal fee, what we call legal fees, and we have a category that we call internal affairs, and some of which then sort of falls under some of the workers' comp, and some of the workers' comp kind of folds over into both. And I think it would help us to understand better sort of what are our total impact of sort of legal related expenses and what we should be considering. If we could get perhaps some data, information, guideposts from, I see the GSBA people are here, so they might be able to help us at some point, and also our neighboring school systems, because I think when comparisons are made of our expenses to other systems, I want to make sure we're looking apples to apples, and I don't think we are always doing that, but I can't be certain, and I don't want to make any suppositions, and I think it would help if you could come back maybe in January and give us, do other systems include workers' comp in their general legal expenses? Do they include what they're generally classified as internal affairs, so that we get a real number? And then I think it'll be much easier for the superintendent to sort of attack that number if we know what sort of the norming of that number is compared to other systems. Would that be okay with you? Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir.
No further discussion. Is there any opposition to placing this item on the consent agenda? No opposition. It will be placed on the consent agenda.